Hey, fellow casuals, it's Ryan, and congratulations, you've made it to the final disclaimer for now. So, this is your disclaimer that this episode was recorded before our Arcane Season 2 coverage. So, if you notice some outdated references, don't worry, they'll be addressed in the future. Now, enjoy the episode, and we will see you soon in the present. Sort of.
I think to put it in perspective, it's basically like Rise is playing a game um, of Marvel Universe where Thanos already has 4 Infinity Stones. Like that's it's not like Brand has to get all the world runes to be a big threat.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra. I don't know why I did that. Episode 166. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Hatch.
What, do I have to do a voice now? Howdy there, friends.
Giddy up, cowboy. I don't know what. The funny thing is, this is not like a cowboy character at all. There's nothing here. Housekeeping up top. You can listen to us everywhere except some places, because I just looked at some links and they're like, I think Stitcher got bought by Pandora. Google Podcast doesn't matter anymore because now it's just YouTube Music. We'll update that stuff, but we are everywhere besides where you're listening. So if you want to shift platforms, we're there. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com to get into contact. Remember, that's podcast, COR. And then follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. And then leave a like and comment wherever you listen. But word of mouth has gotten us to this point. So tell a friend to become consumed by vengeance by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
And when we say consumed by vengeance, that really narrows down the list of what champions we're talking about. Wait a second. It doesn't.
Oh,
It doesn't at all.
no.
It doesn't even narrow down what world we're talking about. This could be our first episode into a completely different universe.
That's so true. We're talking about brand, and the name of this episode is Anger Mismanagement, which there's more depth here. It's an earlier story, right? This is one that was written a while ago, and it was written by 2 authors, even though it's short, which is Ariel Lawrence, who wrote a bunch of the Star Guardian stuff. Ooh, no. All right, we're good. We'll leave that in. So they wrote a bunch of the Star Guardian stuff and also was a previous writer on the original God of War series. And then we have either Laurie or Laurie Goulding, who wrote for Warhammer 40K and also some Warhammer fantasy stuff.
Let's go.
Love to
I'm
see
always
it.
a fan of my Warhammer authors.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been a mess to start off, but it wouldn't be us without a little bit of messiness. But a story is always told best in 3 parts, so we're gonna get into the bio of Brand with part 1. So Keegan Road, which is
All right.
we're gonna
All right. Remember, we make the rules on how it's pronounced. It's Keegan Road.
It's Keegan Road, baby. That's probably why I did the country accent, because it sounds like a country artist.
Keegan Rhodes, Mountain Mama. Take me home.
He ain't no Travis Tritt, but he get it done. So Keegan Road was born in a small coastal village in the Freljord named Reagan's Ridge, and he lived with his mom, who is a herb crafter or a healer, but she has minimal magical powers, so they're kind of just getting by on this ability for her using it inside this small village to help people out. And it was well known in the village that his father was actually an enemy reaver, and this caused them to kind of be ostracized from this small community. So his mother was shunned as a traitor, and he was referred to as the Reaver Bastard.
Yeah, and this is a storyline that should probably start sounding familiar at this point, because we did cover a champion that had a very similar upbringing in Set, because Set was,
Yep.
a Vestian, half Vestian, and his father was a Noxian soldier.
Hmm.
Growing up in Ionia, pretty rough. And that's pretty much what's going on here. The only difference is instead of it being like a Noxian soldier being the father, it's just that the Freljord, especially when you're farther removed from society, is
Hmm.
a lot of raiding tribes. So,
Yep.
uh, the very quick way to get ostracized is by sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah, yeah, which is understandable. We won't get into that in this episode.
Yeah, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, so the mixture of this harsh physical and social environment obviously lead him to have a bad temperament. He's not good at dealing with problems. He's always on edge, and they're also struggling to survive on their own. So during this one harsh winter, his mother passes away. She's frail. She no longer can keep doing this, and it leaves him solo. And as he's going through the funeral procession that he's putting on by himself and he's spreading her ashes, he notices that no one his mother helped, because remember, she's a healer. No one she helped in the past came to pay their respects. And this made him furious for, understandable reasons, but also because of his temperament. And he knew that what they actually wanted was for him to also go away. Right now that she's gone, you should leave too. And he decided, okay, cool, I'll make that wish come true. But first, I'm going to wait until night comes and burn down the whole village. And that's what he did.
And this is where we get the deviation away from like the familiar story in Set, because Set decided to take his problems on head on, and then also was like, hey, I can make money off of it.
Yeah.
So that's what he did. Brand is more the edgy kid in the back of the room that everyone's afraid of, and then decides to dig his heels into it and just commit terrorism.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So after he burned, and he's also kind of a victim to this burning down because he doesn't come away with any scars. A lot of the scarring you see on his body, as we know him, um, comes from this event. But we'll get more of that. He runs off into the woods, right? Anime style, runs away from his problems, and he didn't really have a goal in mind, but he tried to convince himself, okay, my goal is to search for my father. That's never been a thing. He's never cared to find him. And that soon turned into just looking for a social connection, but he has bad social skills, so he's just failing at finding both. And depressed, he decides to just stay in a cold cave and just wait to die. And that's when a mysterious outsider appears.
And this is where, for our longtime listeners, this is where you can pause real quick, make your guess as to who is here, because we have covered it. Not in depth, but we
Yeah.
have covered who's here. So there's your fun little game that you want to play. And so, right here, we can put in the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, create more work for me. I mean,
Yeah.
why not?
Hey, like you said, for you, this comes at no cost to me.
So it's Rise. Surprise. So we wrap up part 2 here of the story is that Rise takes Keegan in and he attempts to help him control his innate wild magic. And they both kind of struggle in this relationship since Keegan didn't have a sense of patience or humility. And, this is directly a reference to Rise's youth under his mentor, Tyrus. And this is where we're going to advertise our book club episodes, where we cover it front to back. And Rise is a big part of that story, and specifically young Rise, because Rise is hundreds of years old. We explain why that is in both his bio episode and, his stories as well. But if you really want to understand Rise's background and how this is a parallel of that, then go listen to those episodes. It's great. But in addition, Keegan never gets Rise's full attention. So it's already a struggle in the project that Rise has taken on, but he's not even giving it 110%. His main goal, if you know Rise's story, is still finding and securing all of the world runes.
And I love it as far as that it is highlighted that it's not Rise's full focus to develop Keegan's growth, because it sets the stage for what is to come, but also highlights the points that were already made. Because again, at this point, Keegan wasn't necessarily going out to find his father. He was just
Yeah.
trying to find a companion. And the companion finds him, but the companion doesn't have the time for him. And we've already seen that mental state wise, uh, Keegan doesn't really respond well when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And
He doesn't have the tools.
so for him, he's likely thinking like, oh well, now this companionship, this relationship that I am so desperately wanting isn't working. That's a recipe for disaster for the guy who's like, I'm pissed at my community, so I'm going to set everything on fire.
Yeah, this takes us to part 3 of the story, where one day Rise's failure essentially comes to full realization as a mentor. Is they come into contact with a world rune, and Keegan fails the challenge that Rise attempted to prepare him for, and that so many powerful mages have failed before. He chooses to try to control the power of a world rune. And Rise could only watch as, the immense power obliterates him, not only mentally, but also physically. And in his place spawns a vengeful creature of fire.
Yeah. And Brand is officially born. But again, this is basically a destruction of Keegan almost to a spiritual level. Like his physical body's gone.
Yeah.
And his own mental state, or like who he mentally was, like his identity is gone. And all that has been preserved of what was Keegan by this world rune is his anger. And world runes are really, really powerful.
Yeah, for our book listeners, no spoilers. You guys understand what's going on here, because this behavior of what this rune has done to Brand is very similar to what we've seen in the Serpent Isles. And it's, well, specifically the Shadow Isles, and the experience of what that negative energy can do to a person and what it leaves behind of that person is all the negative traits or the hyperfixations. So obviously, this new being is born of hate and vengeance, immediately starts lashing out at Rise. Rise is experienced with anarchy. Although it's his fault, he knows how to get the fuck out of there, and that's what he does. Narrowly escapes, which is a good tidbit, is that this newborn being is so strong that he even barely makes it out. And then we fast forward to centuries that have passed, and Brand is now a wild existence, well known in Runeterra. Sometimes he's flying through the skies. Sometimes he's hibernating and no one knows where he's at, or in like a hibernating state for a long period of time. But he's always in search of the next rune. And what it seems to become is this cat and mouse game of Rise trying to be ahead of him. Because if Brand finds one and adds that to his repertoire, then that becomes it goes from C plot to A plot real quick.
Real quick. Real damn quick.
That's where our story ends.
Yeah. I think to put it in perspective, it's basically like Rise is playing a game of like, Marvel universe where Thanos already has 4 Infinity Stones. Like it's not like Brand has to get all the world runes to be a big threat. He's already a big threat, and if he gets one more, it's probably game over. That's where we're at. And again, like with the state that Brand is in now, at this hibernating point, the thing that wakes him up is high levels of magic, specifically like magic that could be a world rune. It's not that he can sense world runes, but he can sense magic. And if the magic's strong enough, a world rune might be involved. That's good enough for Brand. We've talked a lot as far as like present day Runeterra with really powerful magics going around. And that's why people are like, oh, look, it's a comet. And it's just Brand flying off into some massive conflict because a lot of magics get thrown around. So yeah, it's just bad news all over the place.
Yeah, and this, at the end here, we're now in our discussion portion. And this is a shorter one for you all. But this brings up why, I made the joke about the C plot becoming the A plot is because this is technically a good supporting story for Rise's overarching story because he plays a bigger role in the overarching narratives that matter the most to Runeterra. But as Hetch made a good point, is that there are so many events that are heavily laden with magic. So that means you now have this concept of a brand that if something major is happening at any point in Runeterra, he could show up. And if he does show up, it's another problem that no one expected. Um, so we've talked about, the balance of magic. And even when we've brought up the concepts of like what Viego's existence did to magic in the plane of Runeterra. And we've seen how the Shadow Isles have shifted the balance. We've seen stories like Nico's story about her and what happened for her to get to Ishtal and her being an Ishtal and what that means. And this very tentative balance of so many different magical properties existing at once in this one place. Adding another layer on top of that is now brand. So yeah, it's cool to have something that's a big deal, but not a main story beat.
Yeah. I really appreciate it because it's liken it again to a lot of superhero stories.
Yeah,
It's basically Rise's arch nemesis,
yeah,
while also being like intimately tied with Rise.
mhm,
Because it's not just a magical being that he's pissed off in his search for the world runes. He's also a physical manifestation of Rise's failure as a mentor.
yeah,
It's nice to have that because you can have a really big story going on and a very like borderline cataclysmic event going on because of the nature of world runes, and then all of a sudden, boom, here's brand on top of it. And so it's like it gives that vibe of like, your Venom to Spider-Man,
yeah,
or your Joker to Batman, like that villain that we know each other so well because we're constantly going at it, because we're constantly attracted to the same things, because we're both trying to get them with completely different goals. So it, that's a bit of storytelling that's really good because I mean, again, like Joker is arguably the most popular Batman villain.
yeah.
I mean, how many Joker films that we didn't ask for do we have now? So
Well, we got one extra one recently.
hey, hey, it just proved that Morbius is not the worst Marvel movie. It's Morbin time, baby.
Yeah, you make a great point. Well said. And granted, this is a shorter episode, so we hope you enjoy this little, snack bite. But we are going to go deeper into his story because his story is fairly long and it gives you more of that relationship to get to this point. Because this really does give you just an overview. But one thing you want to understand about, Brand's situation is it's not something that can then be saved. He's become a natural disaster, right? We're
Yeah.
now at that
And
point. We've skipped the
and
steps of redemption and, bringing someone back or just believe in yourself. Remember who you are. We are past that. Keegan is gone.
and we purposely stayed away from like spoilers
Yeah.
from like our book club, especially if you're open to it, but like I'm gonna throw a spoiler in to highlight that point. So if you don't want the spoiler, tune out now. Okay, that was your chance. But like we get to see that with Callista's transformation
Yeah.
into who she is now, because there was that little bit of just a few moments of Callista trying to hold on to who she was in life,
Yeah.
or like and her physical being, but then due to the ruination, which again is power from a world rune,
Mhm.
it was just no, hyper fixate on vengeance, hyper fixate on how you were wronged. And unlike Callista, Keegan was not handling the negatives in his life in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
So there's it's reason to believe that there was less of a fight for him to give in to the entity that is now Brand. Like, and once they give into that entity, which we've seen that all the people affected by these ruination events end up giving into them. So once you give in, you're not there anymore. You're not there. So
It's
like,
a true
Keegan's gone.
It's a true tragic story for his character because from beginning to end, he's known nothing but pain, and it ends with suffering. And it's good to have when you have such a large world, and we talk about this, from time to time. You have to have these characters. They can be loved, they can be liked, but it gives you a more well-rounded world where everything doesn't turn out okay. There is not always a winning. There is an L. You can take an L from time to time and rise. His story, now that we're in the spoiler section, we'll continue a little bit. His whole life is trying to make up for the L's he has taken because of his actions. He's trying to not be the ultimate tragic story, and he's extending that by just living longer. But as he lives longer, he notices, I'm continuously taking L's. And that's his journey that's constantly going on. So where does that end? And Keegan is almost like an example of what could have been Rise outside of the events of the Shadow Isles, which makes this even better. So Brand is the supporting story for Rise, and we'll go deeper into that. But him as a character alone is also a good thing to have in this world, and we appreciate these stories, especially because remember, this is written by two people. So
Yeah.
there was obviously thought put into that that approach to that story handling.
And the fact that it's like there is that much of an investment going into this story is exciting from our perspective, because these are the kinds of stories that we love to see more of. And the fact that like they would invest like two authors into just the biography, like, because again, we haven't even dived deeper into the story.
Yeah.
So the fact that the biography has this much of an investment shows that we're not the only ones that are noticing that how important it is to have the yin to the yang that is Rise and Brand.
Yeah.
And this is our show. We have to bring it up. Like MMO implications.
Oh,
because can you imagine doing a raid and or like, some kind of big fight, but then like three spellcasters end up just like dumping all their cooldowns at once, and then all of a sudden like there's another health bar that appears. And then it's just Brand, and your whole team gets wiped out by a random event. I love shit like that. So I come on, it's written here.
Oh,
he just appears where there's a lot of magic, like a comet in the sky. Just throw the paint on the Corolla already. It's good paint.
Yeah, it's good paint. It's good paint. Yeah, dude, a world event because think about a living world where a constant threat of, hey, if you end up in PvP or whatever, there's a chance Brand could show up. And
that would be sick.
You have to manage that because it's like one of the strongest world bosses to deal with. And when you deal with it, he doesn't go away because he's a natural existence at this point of just hate energy. We'll leave it there. We extended this a bit. As always, thanks for listening. And we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.